Yeah, it's obviously good. Obviously good news. I think it's obviously what the reality is. I think it's the news most people wanted, isn't it? That the two semi-final winners would come through. We ourselves had our all clear this morning as well. Completely negative right across the board. So obviously that's fantastic news for us, because obviously everyone's getting concerned. Obviously the Wasps situation, we were obviously concerned about ourselves, making sure we came through it. I mean, we anticipated we would be. We haven't been having any issues with testing so far, so we anticipated we would be, and that's proved to be the case. And obviously, it was great to have a message from Lee this morning saying that their testing had gone well. They were hoping for obviously a positive conversation with Public Health England, which has obviously happened, and now we can confirm and get on with things.
And it's always been Wasps really that you've been preparing for this week.
Well, interestingly, yes and no. Obviously, last week it was very much, the likelihood Wasps probably contained it and come through it. Then obviously the Saturday test showed up what it did. And we were actually at that stage being told it was more likely that we'd end up playing Bristol, because the chance of Wasps at that stage potentially getting through a whole round of testing with not picking up any positives at all was looking rather slim. So we've kind of wavered between getting where we're fortunate, I suppose, is that we had a decent bit of time knowing it was going to be Wasps. So a fair bit of the prep for Wasps got done, and the rush prep this week has been preparing in case it's been Bath. So, you know, the best prep, or so to speak, has been done on Wasps. But obviously, what we haven't done is on Monday and Tuesday this week, we haven't pushed too much prep on either Wasps or Bath, because we didn't want to create a confusing picture. Bath, Bristol. We haven't pushed too much on either Wasps or Bristol, because we haven't wanted to create a confusing picture. So we focused very much on ourselves, as we did in the semi-final week for the Monday and Tuesday. And now obviously we'll break down the detail on Wasps that we want to get in place today.
I mean, there was a feeling, wasn't there, a few weeks ago when obviously you knew you got these two finals back to back, that it would be a great advantage to whoever you were playing in that final. But I mean, obviously Wasps preparations now have been fairly severely curtailed. Where do you think the two sides stand on that now?
I think all of these things, they're all kind of hindsight decisions and what works best for everybody, aren't they? I mean, there's been so many times when you've seen Wasps were a perfect example. I can remember when playoffs were first introduced, and if you were the top seed, you got a week's break, and if you were the second and third seeds, you played off in the semi-final, didn't you? And then went through to a final. And Wasps used to be the past masters at kind of timing a relatively late run, playing in that semi-final, winning it, and then winning the week after in the final. And so I think there's always two schools of thought: is rest better than running on through? I think it's probably relatively even, and it's a little bit like anything. It always seems to be whichever team win, you think they've had the better preparation, but a lot of the time it doesn't really come down to that. A lot of the time it does come down to who turns up and who's ready on the day and who gets there with the most fit players on the pitch, etc. I don't think there's any one particular way. We rested 2 weeks out before our Heineken Cup semi-final, and we played. Although we were able to train, which Wasps haven't been able to train fully. You know, we didn't play anybody in the week before we played Toulouse, and that was one of our best performances of the season. So, it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult, and you know, it's hard to work out what's exactly the best way of doing it. You know, we went semi-final against Bath into the final, and they were two tough games, and they were pretty good for us. So I can't say there's one particular way that suits people better than the other.
And presumably you don't know who the Wasps' affected players are. You won't find out before we all find out when their team sheet comes out on Friday.
No, don't know anything about it, no.
And from Cheek's point of view, I mean, there's no concerns. You're completely happy that all the protocols mean that your players will be protected come Saturday?
Oh, 100%. You know, I've had numerous conversations with Lee right through the process. I've got every confidence. I mean, Wasps will deem themselves very unlucky. I actually think they're one of the teams that have hardly picked up anything at all the way through. And then actually, just it's one of those things. Right at the business end of the season, they've had one little outbreak. I have every confidence that they're doing everything correctly, and I've got every confidence that this has been dealt with, and everyone who will now be on the pitch in the final, both from Exeter and from Wasps, will be COVID-free, and there won't be any danger to anybody.
How big a threat are they going to be, Rob? Because, I mean, they've been on a terrific run of form, haven't they, since, well, the start of the year, I suppose, really?
Well, the truth is they're they're the biggest threat, outside of ourselves, aren't they? Because they've got there on form. They're the form team. They've worked their way towards second in the league. They've won their semi-final at home. They are the biggest competition we can have, just purely based on form. We know that. We've seen they've got numerous good players. They've got numerous good threats. They're enjoying how they play. All the kind of things that you worry about. The flip side of that, we're enjoying how we play as well. We're having success. We're doing well. We're kind of well hardened into tough games. We've had numerous tough games now this season. So there's a lot our way as well. And as I said, the prep will always be a hindsight decision on which way was better based on who turns up on Saturday. I think it's got every ingredient to be a very good game. We're confident, obviously, in how we're playing. We think we're going well. Wasps will feel the same. It's just going to be an interesting few days on who can pin things down the best and turn up at Twickenham on the day in the best frame of mind and commit the best for 80 minutes.
You talked about, obviously, the fact your own COVID test came through clear, which is obviously great. How big a worry is that beforehand? I mean, which is more nerve-wracking, the last 10 minutes of the European Cup final, waiting for your COVID results to come in?
I'm not sure if anything will ever compare to the last 10 minutes of that game on Saturday. But no, it is a little bit. It's always a bit concerning, especially when, as I said, all the focus is on everybody else, and actually that every week you've got to get through things, because people probably don't realise that even one failed test can set in a chain of events going that can be quite difficult to deal with, and it takes quite a while to get on top of it. So, as an example, if you have one failed test and it becomes a front row forward, and that day the Tuesday they've been tested in the morning, you've done a live scrummaging session, a live mauling session, etc. You suddenly have to start tracing and tracking and looking at all types of things that can potentially affect very important players in your side. And so the chain of events that can unfold very quickly from even one test is huge. I think that's what people probably don't realise, is how closely all of this is watched, monitored, dealt with. And so I actually think that there is a nerve-wracking experience you go through each week. We have a little cheer in the team room when we announce it to the players that we've got through it again. It's become one of those fun moments that you kind of fun but serious moments you mark off every week, and it just means you can keep progressing and keep playing important games of rugby.
Injury-wise, how are you looking?
Yeah, we look pretty good. We're the same as probably any team after a big game like the weekend. You've got some walking wounded. We didn't have anybody who came off with a bad injury that we're not anticipating being fit. As I said, we'll deal with some bumps and bruises. We'll keep assessing a couple of guys right up to the kind of end of today, really, in training, making sure they're not getting overloaded or they're managing to come through the bumps and bruises fine. But on the whole, we think we'll be relatively full strength.
That's great. Thank you, Rob. Good luck.
Rob, can I ask you, preparing for a final and only finding out on Wednesday who you're playing? Look, we all know why the situation is. Is that acceptable? And is this maybe the big takeaway for next season, that decisions need to be taken earlier in the week?
I don't really know how you can, to be honest. I mean, we were having a very similar conversation, weren't we, a couple of weeks ago around the semi-final. I think it's one of those things. I think there's going to be little things that will get tinkered with, isn't there, around the regulations around the COVID testing and little outbreaks at clubs as probably we move into the new season. I think everyone's aware that some of those things will be looked at in a little bit more detail. But on the whole, as I said a couple of weeks ago, some very relatively, it was almost an impossible position, wasn't it? The regulations around how games would get played, how points would get allocated, what would lead to teams forfeiting the results. It was all completely new territory for everybody. And actually a set of rules that got written up that have just about dealt with, haven't they? They've got us to a final. And actually, let's still face facts. We've got to the final with the number 1 seeded team and the number 2 seeded team after the regular season in the final. So they've kind of got us there by hook or by crook. They've got us there, rightly or wrongly, how it's worked out. And I think we knew these at the beginning when we went, and it's only, 10 weeks ago, isn't it? 10 and a half weeks ago. It's not very long ago we started this process. So even just a couple of months ago, we signed up to these rules and regs and said we were going to get the season done. And we've all had to get on with it. And I think on the whole, we've dealt with it extremely well. And it would be nice if we could finish it off now with a decent game. Yes, would it have been nice to have had this doubt removed very early in the week? Of course it would. But the scenario we're living in at the moment, there's doubt over absolutely everything, isn't there? There's doubt on what you're going to be able to do tomorrow at the moment. So I don't think it's the end of the world for sport to be able to deal with these little things as we go along.
Can I just take you back to Saturday? You were waiting to be interviewed by TV, and you sort of peered round the backdrop as the players were having a photo taken. The look on your face looked like a proud dad. Is that how you felt?
Not really. I don't think so. I don't feel like the players' dads or anything, dad or anything like that. I think it's a different relationship to that. There's an immense amount of pride, but obviously also there's an immense amount of joy for them as well. Because when you're in this job, I think when you're kind of a team that do things the way we do, you kind of live and breathe the highs and the lows together, and you feel it together. And I thought it's more like that. I felt their joy and their elation about it all, and their relief to a degree as well. And I think it all that's what it felt like. It felt like being part of something that was very special and came to a head in those few minutes at the end. And it was just a fantastic occasion to be part of.
Leicester, Wasps and Saracens have all done the Premiership European double. They're all considered great sides. How would it feel to match that achievement?
Again, it would feel amazing for obvious reasons. We've worked very hard. The big thing for me is people probably still even don't appreciate the sacrifices the players have made through this period. And I know a lot of people have. I'm not trying to be naive, but I think what you need to remember is it goes beyond. I think people still think it's just like, oh, the lad's not going out for a beer in town and stuff like that. It goes way beyond that, because you think the majority of our first team squad have got wives, families, living locally or living actually with them. Extended families living locally. So you think what you actually have to ask, especially around this stage of the season, what you actually have to ask your wife to do, and ask your partner to do, or say around your parents. You're basically saying, especially when you look at what's happened in Exeter in the last couple of weeks and we all know it's relatively one part of the city that's had a little bit of an outbreak based largely around the university as people have come back to the city. But, that's still relatively central in Exeter. So, the players have had to commit not just themselves to not being in and around those places, but also their families not being in and around there. And asking your wife to go to a different shop, and and how the children go to school and how you bring them back. So the sacrifices are way more than people really understand, because the players don't just have to be careful when they're here in the club. The time they really have to lock down and really be focused is away from here. And that's a big commitment that they've made. And like I said, I'm sitting there this morning waiting for the test to come in. They all come in negative. Well, that's a huge credit to the players who've. Don't forget, they've just won the biggest game of their lives at club level, playing for Exeter on Saturday, and they've all come in and gone through a testing process today, and all come through with negative. I mean, it's a massive pat on their backs to how they've conducted themselves. Not just all season, but in particular since winning a huge game of rugby. So, I think it's a reward beyond just the standard rugby reward of winning trophies this year. I think it's a reward for that little bit of extra commitment and a little bit of extra sacrifice that it's taken at this time of the year.
14 of your 23 from 2017 could be selected this weekend. I think it would be only 7 for them. How much does experience count in games like this?
Well, I mean, it obviously counts for a lot because it took us a while to win anything. So the experience of getting there and winning important games obviously adds up. I would like to think that winning last week will actually allow us to play potentially better than you can sometimes do in a final, because we've gone from final to final. And you would like to think you'd like to take all the positives out of that we now have we've not won off, and now we can. I'm not going to say relax, because relax would be the wrong word, but we can actually know we're ready to go, and we've had a very recent experience of what it took to win a big game, and the highs and lows that went through that game, and the good and bad things we did. But at the same time, if we don't turn up, this is Wasps' biggest day in the season. This is the thing that they've been building for weeks and weeks and weeks. If we're actually expecting that this will just be a normal game of rugby, we are going to get shocked. This is a final. There's going to be an intensity there that's going to be at a level that we have to be ready for. And if we don't get ourselves ready for it, the game will be gone very quickly. So we'll talk a lot about that in these next few days. We prepared well up until now, but we've got to be ready for a huge game.
Are you feeling sentimental? Gareth Steenson to start one last time?
Well, no, I don't think there's not a lot of room for sentiment in sport, is there not, if you want to be successful? I mean, Gareth's played a huge part in everything we've done up until now, and I would have said, I'd say exactly the same thing. If he's the right guy to start the final, he'll start. If he's the right guy to be on the bench, he'll be on the bench. That's how we'll select the team right across the board, not just in Gareth's position.
Cheers, Rob.
Thanks.